I was supposed to die on that table. That's what they told me, whispered like some cruel joke in the hospital hallway, as if I wouldn't hear. But I did. And the truth is, I almost wanted to let go until I saw his eyes above the mask. Steady, burning, familiar in a way that made my chest tighten with something beyond fear. Dr. Ethan Caldwell, the man who cut me open, pulled me back from the edge, and in the process, unraveled everything I thought I knew about fate, memory, and love. I didn't expect to survive, let alone with a child still clinging stubbornly to life inside me. I didn't expect the doctor assigned to my case to know me in ways no one should. And I certainly didn't expect his gaze to carry centuries of recognition, as if he had been waiting for me across lifetimes, through pain and endings, always returning to find me again. The story should have ended there. Surgery successful, patient alive, doctor professional. Neat, clean, forgotten. But it didn't, because Ethan refused to let go. Because I couldn't stop seeing the truth in his eyes. And because the child I carried tied us together in ways more complicated than either of us were ready to admit. The first time I woke up after surgery, the lights were too bright, and the world spun like some cheap carnival ride. My throat was dry, raw, like I had swallowed glass. Yet even through the haze, I felt a hand-warm, strong brushing against mine. Not the impersonal grip of a nurse checking vitals. Something gentler. "You're safe now," he whispered. And even though my vision blurred, I knew it was him. That voice didn't just belong to a doctor. It belonged to someone who remembered me. And that terrified me more than the scalpel ever had. Ethan didn't act like a man who had just saved another stranger's life. He acted like he had found something he had lost long ago. The way his eyes softened when I looked at him, the way his shoulders eased only after seeing my breathing steady. There was nothing clinical about it. But who was I to him? I was just a 25-year-old nobody, scraping by with a messy past and an unplanned pregnancy that felt more like a sentence than a miracle. The father was long gone, another bad choice in a string of them, and I had made peace with the fact that raising this child would be my battle alone. Yet Ethan looked at me like I wasn't alone, like I had never been. The hospital smell clung to Mebleach and something metallic, sharp in the air. Outside the window, New York sprawled endlessly, cars honking, life buzzing, indifferent to whether I lived or died. But inside that room, with him at my bedside, time stilled. "Do I know you?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. My voice cracked, a mix of exhaustion and fear. Ethan's hand froze midair, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, his lips curved, not quite a smile, not quite a denial. "Not in this life," he said softly. The words sank into me like ice water. Not in this life. And somehow I believed him. I should have laughed, brushed it off as anesthesia still fogging my brain. But something deeper than logic stirred inside me, something I didn't want to name. Memories that weren't mine flickered in the shadows of my mind. A battlefield drenched in rain, a hand reaching for mine under fire, a voice promising we'd meet again. Impossible. But then again, so was surviving that surgery. Ethan kept visiting long after he didn't have to. He said it was to monitor my recovery. But we both knew better. He lingered. He asked questions no doctor needed to ask. About my favorite books. About the dreams I remembered. About whether the baby kicked at night. And I let him. Because part of me, despite every defense I built, wanted to hear his voice, wanted to feel less alone. Still, it scared me. The intensity in his gaze. The way his words hinted at things no rational man should believe. "I've lost you before," he told me one night, his voice low, barely above the hum of the machines. "I don't want to lose you again." The confession landed between us like a storm. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't look away. "Ethan?" I whispered, his name tasting strange on my tongue. This can't be real." But he only smiled, that sad, knowing smile. "Real doesn't care what you believe." And so began the slow unraveling of everything I thought I understood about myself, about the child I carried, about love. Because what if he was right? What if we had walked this road before, countless times, always finding each other and always losing? What if this life, this chance was the only one where we might finally hold on? That night, when the baby kicked for the first time strong enough to make me gasp, Ethan's hand was there, resting against my stomach. Our eyes met, and for one fragile moment, it felt like the three of us, me, him, and the life inside me were bound together by something eternal. And I realized then, terrified and exhilarated all at once, maybe fate wasn't cruel after all. Maybe it had just been waiting for us to be ready. The days after my surgery blended into a haze of recovery, uncertainty, and an ache that no medicine could numb. Ethan visited daily, each time bringing more than his medical expertise brought patience, a quiet intensity, and a familiarity that unsettled me in ways I didn't understand. He never overstepped, never made a single comment that could be construed as inappropriate. Yet the weight in his eyes said everything his mouth did not. I kept waiting for the moment when the spell would break, for him to become just another doctor in white, a professional distance restored. But that moment never came. Instead, I found myself looking forward to his visits, counting the hours until I could hear the soft click of the hospital door and the almost imperceptible shuffle of his steps down the hall. He was meticulous, always noting my vitals, my moods, and yes, sometimes the tiniest twitch of my hand or shift in my breathing. But behind every professional gesture, there was an almost desperate tenderness. It was disarming, like a storm quietly breaking over a calm sea. "Your blood pressure is stable today," he said one morning, his tone clinical but with an undertone I couldn't place. He adjusted the cuff and then, almost instinctively, glanced at me with a softness that made me question if I was imagining it. "Thanks," I said, my voice hoarse from lack of sleep and the rawness of my emotions. "You're welcome," he replied, but he lingered, his eyes searching mine for something unspoken, and I hated that I could read him so easily. The hospital became a small, contained universe, where every corridor, every faint smell of antiseptic, seemed to orbit around the tension between us. Patients, nurses, and visiting families came and went, oblivious to the quiet gravitational pull that had taken over our lives. But inside that bubble, Ethan and I existed in a different timeline. His presence made the world brighter, yet somehow heavier, as if carrying centuries of memory between us. I began to see glimpses of it, memories that were not my own but felt like they belonged to me anyway. Snatches of conversation, half-forgotten smiles, hands brushing in rainstorms, laughter shared under candlelight. And the strangest part? Ethan always felt there too. Not present in the way anyone else could touch him, but present in essence, in soul. One evening, the hospital was quiet, the city outside humming with life I couldn't fully participate in. I had been dozing when a gentle knock stirred me. "May I come in?" It was him. Of course it was him. I nodded, managing a weak smile. "Yeah." He stepped inside, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers, the kind you'd find along the edges of forgotten roads. Not perfect, but undeniably beautiful. He set them on the table beside my bed, then moved closer, adjusting the blanket over me with hands that trembled slightly, betraying the calm facade he wore so effortlessly. "You don't have to do this," I whispered, feeling ridiculous for even thinking he could, or would leave. "I'm not going anywhere," he said softly, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Not now, not ever. I can't. I've been looking for you a long time." Those words made my chest tighten, threatening to break open from the weight of their meaning. I wanted to laugh, to cry, to scream, everything all at once. But I did none of those things. I only let the quiet swell between us, carrying the magnitude of what he had just admitted. Days bled into weeks, and the bond between us strengthened in ways that defied explanation. Ethan became more than my doctor, was my confidant, my anchor, my reminder that life could still surprise me even in its darkest moments. And yet, there was always a shadow lurking just beyond our fragile happiness. The hospital administrators didn't notice it. The nurses didn't notice it. But I did. And Ethan did too. We both knew what we were risking. There were rules, professional boundaries, ethics that demanded detachment. And we were breaking them. Every look, every touch, every unspoken word drew us closer, threading our lives together with invisible, unyielding strings. I remember the night it became impossible to ignore. The city outside was drenched in rain, the neon lights reflecting in puddles that glistened like molten gold. I was restless, unable to sleep, and Ethan appeared at my door as if drawn by the same restless gravity. "You shouldn't be here," I murmured, though my voice lacked conviction. "I can't stay away," he said simply, stepping inside. His coat was damp, his hair plastered to his forehead, yet he didn't care. He never cared about appearances when it came to me. The distance between us disappeared almost by instinct. He knelt beside my bed, his hands hovering over mine, unsure whether to touch or pull back. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the inevitability of it. "I've loved you," he whispered, his forehead resting lightly against mine. "Long before this life, long before you could even remember me. And I'll love you beyond it." I felt something break open inside mesomething raw, something I had been holding in fear and doubt. The past, the present, the future all collided in that moment, leaving me gasping and trembling. "Ethan." My voice was barely audible, but it carried every fragment of hope, every ounce of fear, every hidden longing I had tried to ignore. He pressed his lips to my forehead, then my temple, and finally, gently, to mine. The kiss was soft, deliberate, full of a tenderness that no words could capture. It was a promise, a memory, a lifeline all at once. In the weeks that followed, the intensity between us became a quiet rhythm. We spoke little of the past lives that haunted us, though sometimes our hands would brush and a shared glance would convey everything words could not. Instead, we built a fragile present together, one filled with whispered confessions, soft laughter, and moments of normalcy that felt extraordinary simply because we had each other. He stayed by my side during every doctor's appointment, every checkup, every restless night. The baby kicked often now, a constant reminder of the life growing between us. And every time, Ethan would place his hand over mine on my stomach, and I would see it again, the unbroken chain of devotion, stretching across time, across lifetimes, all centered on this tiny being who was both ours and entirely its own. There were challenges, of course. Not everyone understood. Not everyone accepted the depth of our connection. Some whispered behind closed doors, some offered disapproving glances. But none of it mattered. Not when Ethan's hand was in mine. Not when the future seemed to hum with possibility. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, casting the hospital in hues of amber and rose, Ethan and I walked down the empty corridors, our hands intertwined. The world outside continued, oblivious, but inside our little bubble, everything was vivid, every detail magnified. "Do you ever think about it?" I asked quietly, watching his profile against the glowing window panes. "About us before?" He smiled, a shadow of sorrow in his eyes. "All the time. I think about what we lost, what we've found, and what we'll never let go of again." I leaned my head against his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. It was grounding, anchoring me in a reality that often felt too surreal to trust. "I'm scared," I admitted softly, "of everything, of losing you, of failing at this, of life," he offered gently, finishing my thought. I nodded. "Then don't be afraid," he said firmly, "because whatever happens, I'll be here. We'll face it together. Always." And so our days passed, each one a mixture of ordinary life and extraordinary love. Ethan's presence became my lifeline, the baby a living testament to our bond, and the hospital a stage where our quiet drama unfolded in all its intensity. We didn't speak of the past too much, yet it lingered, a silent thread weaving through every glance, every touch, every shared smile. It was in the mundane that the magic happened. Sharing coffee in the dim glow of the hospital cafeteria, laughing at corny TV shows while waiting for appointments, holding hands under the sterile fluorescent lights, feeling the baby kick in rhythm with Ethan's heartbeat. Each moment was a reminder that love, patient and enduring, could survive the cruelties of fate. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the the fear began to fade. Slowly, the weight of past lives and unfinished stories lifted, leaving only the present, a fragile, luminous present where we could finally, painfully, joyfully be together. Because even if the world outside did not understand, even if the past threatened to intrude, we had something no one could take from us: each other and the life we had created together. The hospital had settled into its usual rhythm, the hum of machines, the distant footsteps in corridors, the occasional murmur of nurses and visitors forming a background melody to my days. But for Ethan and me, nothing felt ordinary. Each day carried an undercurrent of tension and unspoken acknowledgement that the bond we shared was extraordinary, fragile, and, in many ways, forbidden. It was during one of those quiet mornings, sunlight slicing through the blinds in sharp golden lines across the floor, that Ethan surprised me with a small, leather-bound journal. "I thought, maybe this could help," he said, his voice cautious, unsure if I would accept it. "For the baby, for us, for everything." I took it hesitantly, feeling the weight of it in my hands. The leather was soft, worn at the edges, smelling faintly of cedar and ink. I flipped it open, and the first page bore a single line in his precise handwriting. "For the life we are about to share, and the love that has survived lifetimes." Tears prickled my eyes. "Ethan." He shook his head, forcing a small, vulnerable smile. "Don't cry. It's not sad. Proof. Proof that we've always found each other. Somehow. Proof." The word resonated deep within me. It was the first tangible link between the surreal flashes of past lives and the present reality. The journal was filled with sketches, notes, and fragmented memories, vivid images of streets and rooms I didn't recognize but somehow felt intimately familiar. Wars and gardens, candles and storms, faces that mirrored ours in uncountable ways. And, always, a recurring motif: two men, connected by an invisible, unbreakable thread. I spent hours poring over the pages, each one a revelation, a jolt, a confirmation of what Ethan had been trying to tell me. "You're serious," I finally whispered, my fingers tracing one particularly detailed drawing of a rainy city street where two figures stood close, their hands almost touching. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life," he replied, voice low, almost reverent. "I've seen us before in ways that defy logic. I've lost you before. I can't do it again." And I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust the aching familiarity, the undeniable pull in my chest every time he touched my hand, every time our eyes met. But fear lingered, gnawing at the edges of my hope. Fear of the unknown, fear of repeating mistakes, fear of letting my heart open completely to someone who carried memories that made even time itself feel unstable. That afternoon, the baby kicked strongly, causing me to gasp and clutch my stomach. Ethan was immediately at my side, placing a steadying hand over mine. His thumb traced gentle circles, and he whispered, "Hello there. Can you feel how loved you are already?" I laughed softly through tears. "You talk to them like they understand English." "They do," he said, eyes gleaming with something unspoken. "Or maybe they just understand us." The intimacy between us had deepened to a point where silence spoke more than words ever could. Every glance, every touch, every shared breath seemed to carry centuries of unspoken communication. And in those moments, I realized how deeply intertwined our fates had become, not just with each other, but with the life growing inside me. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. And it was inevitable. A week later, the tension in the hospital reached a subtle peak. Rumors had begun to circulate about Ethan, and discreet whispers from nurses, sidelong glances from staff, hints of disapproval and curiosity. Ethan remained professional in appearance, his composure flawless, but I saw the strain in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. "We can't let them see us like this," I murmured one evening as he lingered by my bedside, his presence a comforting weight. "I know," he said quietly, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "But we can't let fear dictate our lives either. We'll be careful, discreet, but we won't stop living." The words settled over me like a bomb, but the tension didn't dissipate entirely. I couldn't ignore the weight of judgment, the potential consequences of our connection. Yet in Ethan's presence, the fear was tempered by certainty, the certainty that, whatever history or lifetimes had brought us together, he would never let go. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself wandering the hospital halls, drawn to the quiet of the empty corridors. The city outside was a muted glow, rain-slick streets reflecting neon signs in scattered patterns. And there he was, standing by a window in the pediatric wing, his silhouette framed by the lights of the city. "You shouldn't be wandering," he said without turning, his voice low but carrying the subtle authority of a man used to being in control. "I couldn't sleep," I admitted, approaching him slowly. "I needed to be away from the room, from everything." He finally turned, eyes softening as they met mine. "Come here." He held out his hand. I hesitated only briefly before taking it, feeling the warmth and strength of his grip. We stood there, side by side, looking out over the city. Rain pattered against the glass, the streets below shimmering with reflections. And in that quiet, suspended moment, I felt the full weight of what he had once told me, that he had loved me across lifetimes, that he had lost me and found me again. "Do you ever wonder why?" I asked quietly. "Why us? Why now?" "All the time," he admitted. "But I don't think it's about why. I think it's about finding each other no matter what, about holding on when the world tells us not to." His hand found mine again, fingers intertwining naturally. It was the simplest gesture, yet it carried the full gravity of a love that had survived the impossible. The weeks passed, each one a delicate dance between hope and fear. Ethan guided me through appointments, watched over me at night, and stayed by my side when the baby kicked strongest, when the pain was sharpest, and when the fear of the unknown threatened to swallow me. We talked often about the future, what it might look like, what challenges we would face, and how we would raise our child together. Each conversation revealed layers of vulnerability, hopes we had never dared to speak aloud, and dreams we had long buried. And in every word, every silence, every glance, I felt the echoes of our past lives, a continuous thread that had finally brought us here, together, in this fragile, extraordinary present. One evening, Ethan surprised me with a small dinner in the hospital room, a quiet affair of homemade sandwiches and fruit, eaten together under the dim glow of the bedside lamp. It was simple, mundane even, but in that simplicity, it felt miraculous. "To us," he said, raising a plastic cup of water in a toast, his eyes gleaming. "To us?" I echoed, feeling my heart swell with a mixture of joy, fear, and disbelief. And in that moment, the world outside the hospital, the city, the expectations, the rules ceased to matter. It was just him, me, and the life growing inside me, a triad of love that had endured centuries, wars, and separation. But the past never lets go so easily. A week later, I received an unexpected visitor, someone from the hospital administration, a stern-looking woman with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through me. "Mr. Harris," she began, using my last name formally, "we've received some concerning reports regarding your interactions with Dr. Caldwell." My heart sank. Ethan's hand found mine instinctively, a small but powerful anchor in the rising storm. "I don't know what you mean," I said, my voice trembling slightly. She raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "We have standards, professional boundaries, and we take these matters very seriously. I suggest you and Dr. Caldwell tread carefully, or there will be consequences." I glanced at Ethan, whose expression was calm on the surface but tense underneath. His fingers squeezed mine subtly, a silent reassurance. "We'll be careful," he said simply, his tone steady and unwavering. "But I won't stop caring for him. Not now, not ever." The administrator left, leaving a heavy silence in her wake. And in that silence, I realized that our love, while miraculous, was fragile, constantly threatened by the outside world, by rules, and by those who refused to understand the depth of what connected us. That night, Ethan and I sat by the window again, the city lights reflecting off the rain-soaked streets. We were quiet at first, each lost in thought, each processing the reality of what had just occurred. "I don't care what they say," I finally whispered. I can't imagine my life without you. Or the baby." He turned to me, his eyes reflecting the same depth of emotion I felt. "Then we fight," he said simply. "We fight for this. For us. For them. No matter what." And in that moment, I understood fully that true love was never passive. It required courage, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to face the world together, against all odds. The days continued, each one a mixture of tenderness, challenge, and quiet triumphs. Ethan and I navigated the complexities of hospital rules, past life memories, and the growing anticipation of parenthood with a fragile but determined grace. Every kick, every heartbeat, every shared glance reinforced the knowledge that we were not alone, that we had found each other across time and circumstance, and that nothing could erase the bond we shared. I began to fill the journal he had given me, documenting our days, our fears, our joys, and our quiet victories. And as I wrote, I realized that this was more than a record for the baby. It was a testament to the endurance of love, to the miraculous ways in which fate, memory, and devotion could intersect to create something timeless and unbreakable. Ethan read over my shoulder as I wrote one evening, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder, eyes filled with quiet pride. "You're capturing everything perfectly," he said. "This will be something they will treasure. Something we will treasure." I smiled softly. "I just hope. It's enough. It's more than enough," he replied, pressing a gentle kiss to my temple. "Because it's ours." The weeks that followed were a delicate dance between anticipation and anxiety. The baby's movements grew stronger, more insistent, a constant reminder of the life that was about to change everything. Ethan was with me for every checkup, every restless night, every moment that threatened to overwhelm me with fear or exhaustion. And every time, he reminded mesalently, with a touch, a glance, a whispered word, that we were in this together. But fate, as it always did, refused to allow ease without tension. One evening, I noticed Ethan staring out the window longer than usual, a shadow crossing his face. "What is it?" I asked, following his gaze to the city lights, blurred by the gentle drizzle against the glass. He shook his head slowly. "It's nothing, or maybe everything. Memories. They come in waves sometimes, stronger than before." I reached for his hand, feeling the tremor beneath his composed exterior. "Tell me. I want to understand." He sighed, a long, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "I see us, all of us, the lives we've lived, the battles, the separations, the moments we should have had and didn't. And sometimes, it's hard to distinguish the past from the present." I squeezed his hand, a gesture of solidarity. "Then let me be your anchor. Right now, in this life. That's what matters." He looked at me, eyes glistening. "You always know what to say." The night labor began unexpectedly, a sudden intensity that pulled me from sleep into panic. The hospital was a flurry of controlled chaos, nurses rushing, monitors beeping, the sterile scent mingling with the electric energy of imminent birth. But through it all, Ethan never left my side. His hand was a constant presence, grounding me, his voice calm and steady, even when my own thoughts threatened to spiral. "You're strong," he murmured, leaning close so only I could hear. "Just a little longer. You're doing perfectly." I clung to his words like a lifeline, each contraction a test of endurance, each breath a reminder that we were about to cross a threshold that would change everything. And through the haze of pain and anticipation, I felt something else, an overwhelming surge of recognition, of memory, of destiny finally fulfilled. Because in that room, under the harsh fluorescent lights, surrounded by the sterile efficiency of modern medicine, I realized fully that this was where we were meant to be. That every past life, every separation, every longing had led us to this moment. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes. Time lost all meaning. My body ached, my spirit wavered, and yet through every wave of pain, Ethan was there, a constant presence, whispering words of encouragement, holding my hand, pressing his forehead against mine whenever I faltered. "You can do this," he said, voice soft but unwavering. "We're doing this together." And somehow, through the fear, the exhaustion, the raw intensity of labor, I found strength. Strength born not only from the body but from love unshakable, enduring, a force that spanned lifetimes. When the first cry cut through the tense air, it was a sound that tore through every shadow, every doubt, every lingering fear. The baby was here alive, perfect, a miracle born of survival, devotion, and centuries of unspoken longing. Ethan's hands shook as he reached for the tiny being, holding the baby with reverence and awe. "We did it," he whispered, eyes glistening with tears. "We finally did it." I reached for him, pulling him close despite my own weakness. We have them," I breathed, my voice shaking. "We have our baby." And in that moment, all the tension, all the fear, all the years of waiting and searching, dissolved. There was only the warmth of his embrace, the tiny heartbeat of our child, and the unbreakable bond that had carried us through lifetimes to this very instant. The days that followed were a gentle blur of exhaustion, wonder, and quiet joy. Ethan was there for every feed, every diaper change, every sleepless night, his hands steady, his heart open, his presence unwavering. And I began to understand fully the depth of what we had endured, the lengths to which fate had gone to bring us together, the resilience required to survive lifetimes apart, the extraordinary miracle of love that refused to yield to time or circumstance. We laughed at small things, tiny moments of normalcy amidst the extraordinary. A spit-up disaster that left us both covered in tiny splatters of milk and giggles. A late-night feeding where Ethan hummed a song from his past life, making the baby stir and me laugh through tears of fatigue. Every mundane moment became extraordinary simply because we were together, because we had survived, because we had been given this chance. One evening, as the city outside settled into quiet darkness, Ethan and I sat by the window, our child nestled between us. The lights of the hospital reflected off the glass, and the gentle hum of distant traffic filled the room like a lullaby. "You know," I whispered, my fingers tracing his jawline, "I used to think love like this was impossible, that fate was cruel, that time could take everything away. But now, I understand." He turned to me, eyes reflecting the same awe and wonder I felt. "It was never impossible," he said softly. "We just had to find the right life, the right moment, the right chance to get it right. And here we are." I leaned my head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest, the soft rhythm of his heartbeat. "I'm not afraid anymore," I admitted. "Not of the past, not of the future. Not with you." Ethan pressed a gentle kiss to my temple, then rested his forehead against mine. "Neither am I. Not ever." The months that followed were a careful balance of healing, learning, and embracing our new life together. We navigated parenthood with patience and humor, facing sleepless nights and endless challenges with a shared determination that only strengthened the bond between us. And slowly, the hospital that had once been a place of fear and uncertainty became a sanctuary, a space where love, patience, and devotion flourished amidst the ordinary routines of care and recovery. Ethan continued to share fragments of his past life memories with me, each story a vivid thread in the tapestry of our shared history. Wars survived, cities explored, storms endured, and moments of quiet intimacy that transcended time. And through it all, our connection deepened, built on the foundation of shared experience, unwavering devotion, and the undeniable certainty that we were meant to find each other again and again. One quiet afternoon, as the sun streamed through the hospital windows, I held our child close, Ethan's hand resting over mine, our fingers intertwined. The baby's eyes fluttered open, gazing up at us with a clarity and innocence that took my breath away. "You see," Ethan whispered, his voice full of wonder. "This is what we fought for. This is the result of everything we endured." I smiled, tears slipping down my cheeks, and pressed my lips to his hand. "It's perfect," I said softly. "All of it. Us, this, everything." And in that moment, I understood fully that love true, enduring, unyielding love was the only force that could transcend lifetimes, overcome separation, and survive the trials of fate. As the months turned into years, we built a life together, rooted in the quiet certainty of devotion, the joy of shared experience, and the resilience born of surviving centuries of longing. We celebrated milestones, laughed through struggles, and held each other through every fear and doubt. And always, our child remained the living testament to a love that had endured beyond reason, beyond time, beyond the cruel separation of past lives. Ethan and I never spoke much of the past lives anymore, not because we had forgotten, but because we no longer needed to. The present, rich and full and alive, was more than enough. And in each other's eyes, in the gentle rhythms of our shared life, we found everything we had ever sought. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of gold and rose, I sat with Ethan and our child on the balcony of our small home. The city sprawled endlessly before us, alive with lights, movement, and possibility. Ethan wrapped an arm around me, the baby nestled safely between us, and I felt a profound sense of peace. "Do you think we finally got it right?" I asked quietly, leaning into him. Ethan smiled, pressing his forehead to mine. "I know we did. This time, we held on. This time, we never let go." And as the stars emerged one by one in the deepening sky, I realized that for the first time in countless lifetimes, we had everything we had ever wanted. Each other, a family, and a love that would endure beyond time itself. Because some connections, some loves are simply eternal. And ours had survived everything, only to arrive here, in this perfect, fleeting, extraordinary moment of life, hope, and unending devotion. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.